Working. Well, hello, I'm Florian. I work for Open Web Docs, and I'm very happy to hear that you're all very interested in documentation and making that better. So yeah, I'm a technical writer at Open Web Docs. We are a non-profit organization and open collective, and our work is funded by donations from organizations and individuals. And we mostly contribute to MDN, which you all probably know and use on a daily basis. It's the #1 resource for developers to find out about web technologies. And so what we do is we contribute to the underlying content. That's the MDN content repository and MDN browser compat data as well, that collects all the browser compat data for those pages. And so we have a lot of day-to-day maintenance on keeping this website up to date, but we also do project work. And so I'm thinking for this group or for this workshop that there might be a potential new project for web security docs. And so why I'm really here is I would love to chat with some folks that know a lot about security, about defining requirements for documentation for security, maybe even creating a new content outline, also reviewing security docs, because we as technical writers, we write about a lot of things on the web platform, but we don't necessarily have all the expertise in the security field, but I'm sure a lot of you do. And then we would like to understand more the developer needs, and the survey that Francois has shared for this workshop and also has shown a bit on the first day was very useful as a first insight. So to get us a bit into what's currently on MDN, and I took a bit of time to assess and look at, if I'm curious about security and I would go on MDN, what would I find? And there's a landing page on the web security. It has 19 pages. They're all a bit random. That's the usual topics, same origin, CSP, CORS, those kind of things. We also, I think a while ago, created a CORS error reference, because people really struggle with CORS and they need to understand all the errors that are thrown at them in the console. And so for each of those errors, we wrote a reference, and we have like miscellaneous security related docs, glossary pages, what is man in the middle, what is XSS and stuff. But this is all pretty disorganized, right? So what MDN traditionally is really good at is reference docs, and this has to do with the fact that whenever we ship yet another new web platform feature, we document it. So we create reference docs. We write about the latest CSP directive. We write about SRI and all these web platform features, but we don't necessarily organize them well. There's no navigation right now on this security landing page. The navigation is basically an alphabetical list of all the things that you could learn about security. There's no user journey at all. I couldn't find a security tutorial. And there's no mapping to developer needs, those that we have learned from the survey that was run on MDN, or from other developer needs that we know of. And so I can tell you that the security docs are not alone. There's other documentation sets that suffer from the same problem. And recently we've done work, for example, on the performance docs, but also on the progressive web apps docs to make that better. So how do we make this better? And for that, I would like to introduce a diagram or a system that was first introduced by Daniel Procida. Then it was published on the Divio and or diataxis.fr. So this is not something that I've invented, but it's a really good way to think about documentation. And this is based on the research that there are basically two types of developers. The one is the concept-driven developer, and the other is the action-driven developer. So if you look at this diagram and you look at on the left side, you have tutorials and explanations. So you are, and don't worry, you don't have to be either the concept-driven or the action-driven developer. I can tell you, sometimes you are the other, sometimes you're the one, sometimes you're the other. So let's say you're a concept-driven developer, you're studying, then you spend your time on pages like tutorials and explanations. So you're on the left side of this diagram. You want to learn about a new thing, you want to understand the theoretical concepts, so you want to be taken by a hand in a tutorial, and you want to go from not knowing anything to completing a project and then knowing something, and you will be taken by the hand by the author of the tutorial. Or you want to understand concepts like the browser security model, same origin or whatever, and then you likely want to read an explanation. On the other hand, you might not be studying right now, you want to get work done, and for that you need other sorts of documentation. You need how-to pages and you need reference pages. So how-to is, I think this, I always think about those when I think about the Stack Overflow developer. So how to do something, then you mostly land on Stack Overflow. But we've also gotten better on MDN to write more practical, down to the task that's at hand, and write an how-to for that. And then, as you all know, the classic reference page that is also very action-oriented. You exactly know what you want, you know exactly which methods or feature you want to use, and you need all the information about how this works again, what the parameters are, and so forth. I looked at the survey that was run on MDN, and I saw that we had like very challenging and somewhat challenging answers on some of the topics that were given in the survey, and I've tried to put them into the categories of these 4 quadrants of the system. And I think it's quite telling that there wasn't really anything for reference, because the reference articles exist. But for example, understanding security threats and understanding the browser security model, we don't really have guides for that. And so that to me was quite telling, that we should in fact think about all these other 3 types of pages and create them. And then I also did like a quick exercise on thinking about potential new content structures and articles for all of these 4 quadrants. And of course, this is only me not knowing all that much about security, but I think I quickly came up with quite a few things. I want to briefly talk about the how-tos, because I think they are quite important. They're probably the core of this. And I think there are probably 3 different categories of how-tos that we should think about. One is the classic how to use a web platform feature how-to, which if you know what you want to use, then, well, okay, then that's pretty straightforward to write, and we just need to know what are all the web platform features. Another category is how to protect against an attack. And then here, to write such articles, I already need to know what are all the different attacks. So definitely here, I would need a lot more help from security experts to tell me exactly what sorts of XSS and other attacks exist and how to protect them. And then even more complicated is if you want to make a tutorial and kind of explain how to make a thing secure, because that requires web platform features that make the thing secure, but that also requires to protect against attacks. So that's kind of the most viable, but also, I guess, the most complex how to. So what can we do as Open Web Docs to help you with? We can surely organize those docs. So as I've shown you in the 4 quadrants, we have some clue about how to go about educating people about things. We can also write those docs, and we can help maintaining those docs. But what we really need from security people like all of you is review and advice and help on creating content outlines. And we also need insights into what developers don't understand. So for me, kind of the thing that I want to bring up in this workshop is, should we have a follow-up workshop where we discuss in more details what sorts of documentation we need and we should create on sites like MDN? Could we maybe even collectively create a content outline that addresses all these 4 quadrants that I've presented? And then finally, I think the first survey was excellent to get an initial insight into what are the misunderstandings for developers. But maybe we need even more. Maybe we need user interviews to understand how exactly web developers are struggling with web security topics. And that's it. Thanks.